Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David, and welcome to all our listeners. This is the Feeling Good podcast, episode 366. Today is a really special day. We have our beloved Matt May joining us, and we also have Jason Pyle, who I'll introduce in a little bit. And today our topic is going to be on artificial intelligence. So hi, Matt and Jason.
Hey, Rhonda. Great to see you. Great to see you, David.
Yeah, likewise. It's always a joy every time we see you, Matt, and we jam and act ridiculous, and people seem to like it. It's like what the Buddha called an effing miracle.
I want to start by reading 2 endorsements that we got, and then we might be singing a song for David. And one first endorsement is from Carolyn, and she wrote, "Hi, David. Happy birthday. I wish you all the best and everything for the future. Good health, precious times with your family and friends, lots of enjoyment and fun. You're an incredibly amazing person with so much creativity, power, compassion, kindness, patience, and above all, a beautiful heart of gold. You're truly an inspiration for me, and you never cease to amaze and fascinate me. You have a special place in my life, and you always will have. Warmly, Carolyn."
No, thank you, Carolyn. You're a very special, awesome person too, and I'm just really lucky to know you.
And another lovely endorsement from another beloved team therapist, Jill Levitt, who is in a world class by herself.
Yep.
And she wrote, "Dear David, happiest of birthdays to you. I could not be happier to have you in my life as a dear friend and mentor, Jill."
And I would say the same to you, Jill. Along with Matt May and Rhonda, you're one of the 3 top therapists in the world and 3 top human beings. And I'm just so grateful to know you and to teach with you and to have you as a friend and dear colleague. And the same to you, Matt. And before we dive in a little bit, well, I guess we're going to sing.
Well, we're going to sing you happy birthday.
Yeah.
It's a shame. I told you the story how I was kicked off the happy birthday singing when I worked as a waitress when I was in graduate school.
Oh, I don't remember that story, but
yes,
become obvious in a moment.
Yes, it will. Okay, ready?
Ready.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
To me.
Happy birthday, dear David. Happy birthday to you.
Me. Thank you.
And many more.
Yes, I appreciate that.
That sounded.
And before we get into
melodious.
our most fantastic topic for today, which is, I think, one of our most exciting podcast topics in months, if not years, could you guys just give a brief history of your relationship, starting out in medical school buddies, which to me is fairly amazing, and the route you took, Jason, to come to where you are now, and then we'll get into our fantastic topic.
Well, David, I asked Jason to tell me a little bit about himself. So can I just say that first, and that will naturally ease into them speaking about their relationship?
Great. Good. Perfect.
Okay, cool. So Jason Pyle, an MD, PhD, joined Evolve as a managing director in 2022 to focus his work on the mass mental health crisis and the rampant diseases of despair, which afflict tens of millions of Americans. Evolve Foundation is a private foundation dedicated to the advancement of human consciousness. Evolve is active in philanthropy and venture investments in the mental health fields. Jason is an accomplished biotechnology executive with over 20 years of executive management and technology development experience. Jason is committed to developing healthcare technologies and bringing science-backed healing to the most important problems of our generation. Jason is also a veteran of the U.S. Army. I believe he was a Ranger and earned an engineering degree from the University of Arizona. He received both his MD and his PhD in neurosciences from the Stanford University School of Medicine, which I believe is where he met Matt. So
thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, David. Great to see you, Matt. Nice to be here, Rhonda. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you too, Jason, for your service to our country.
My pleasure.
Yeah, Jason, and you're one of my favorite human beings, and it's just such a pleasure to have you on the podcast with David and Rhonda, two of my other favorite human beings. It's just a dream come true for me to have all of us together to talk about this topic. Indeed, we've known each other since we were in the same medical school class at Stanford. I think you got both your MD and PhD in the same amount of time it took me to get my MD.
Well, I don't think that's true, but yeah, so we were in the same class together. Matt, of course, you're one of my oldest and dearest friends. It's a real pleasure, to be here and talk with you. And, I've had the real pleasure of, watching you from, the very beginning when we were friends as students to becoming a, psychiatrist, to becoming, locally and then nationally known as one of the best psychiatrists in the nation. So it's been one of my pleasures.
Well, I'm proud to know you, Jason, and I'll just share one memory of our past together, and this was while you founded Sapphire Fuel, and you were CEO of that, and I was so proud when I saw you testifying in front of the Senate, where all of the other oil companies were getting reamed out and told what a bad job they were doing. And they turned to you and they said, it's just wonderful what you guys are doing. You sequenced the chloroplast, you were able to insert that into an algae that produced octanes, harvesting carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere to make fuel just using sunlight. And it was kind of one of the many miracles that you've done. And I've just always been proud to know you because your intentions in the world have always been so good to help as many people as you can. And I just admire that so much. And same for you, David. Here it's your birthday. And how are you spending your time? It's to help.
Yeah, this is the same stuff I do every day. But tonight we're going out to dinner, actually, to celebrate my birthday with my son, who just got married, and his new wife, who's from Russia, and her mother, who just came over from Russia. And they're going to have a second wedding this weekend.
Oh, how fun!
Because she's here, yeah. So it'll be kind of fun. But today I've been doing the same stuff I do every day that I just love doing most of the time.
Congrats
at any rate.
Congrats to Eric.
Yeah.
Congrats. Thank you.
Can't have enough weddings.
Yeah.
Well, should we dive?
I was just going to say thank you also for having me. It's been a pleasure knowing you for the past few years. This is a great chance to get together and talk about something we both love and care about. Also wanted to just let you know, my 14-year-old daughter is reading your book.
Oh, cool.
And she finds it incredibly helpful.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for sharing that.
Do you know which of his books she's reading?
The first one, The Feeling Good.
Nice.
Yeah, that's neat.
And she really is connecting with it, and I can already tell it's caused a big impact in her. And
oh, that is so neat. Is she a freshman in high school?
She is, and she was dealing with some pretty difficult transition things, and COVID had been hard on her. She's an athlete, and she's social, and so a lot of her life got shut down, and it was really stressful. And
oh wow,
she was really exhibiting some signs of needing a boost. and
Wow.
not feeling well. And one of the neatest things that happened was she ran into my room the other day and told me, "You won't believe what I just learned." She said, "I learned it's the things that I think that make me feel."
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's so cool. I'm just delighted to hear that. I started to connect quite a bit with our daughter when she was a freshman in high school too, and she'd had some difficult times, and she thought she was one of the unpopular people, and she thought it was genetic, which it probably is. And but I said, no, it's just, you have to learn how to flirt and how to manipulate boys and stuff. So, Dad, you're full of shit. You don't know what you're talking about. And my wife says, no, this is one thing he's really good at. You should listen to him. And we began to hang out and teach her some stuff, and we still giggle about it every time we get together, look back with fondness on that time. It was really a close time. But teenagers are tough. Now our grandson is just about to he just turned 14, and he's just about to turn 15 in a few weeks, and he's going to be getting a driver's permit in 9 months. I thought he was just like 3 years old or something. This stuff happens really fast. But anyway, let's get back to our topic, because we've been working a little bit with AI with our app, and
for those who aren't in the know,
yeah.
AI stands for artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and our Jason Mino, he and I and Jeremy have actually been programming it, and it's really difficult to distinguish its performance from a high-powered therapist like you, Matt, and it's really dramatically outperforming, I would say 99% of human therapists already. And so it brings a lot of questions to mind on a lot of different levels. And, is this type of thing going to replace all human therapists, or is there something about a human-to-human interaction that can't be replaced with artificial intelligence, and a lot of other questions? And how do we think about these things? And since you guys have the answers, and since Rhonda's got the questions, let's dive in.
Well, first, maybe you could just simply explain what is AI and how does it work? And Jason, do you want to do that?
I take a crack at it. I mean, I'll preface it by saying I'm not a full technical expert on the topic, though I've had the pleasure of spending a lot of time recently looking at how it's being applied in mental health and a bunch of its different technical aspects. So in general, AI refers to artificial intelligence. Technically, we typically talk about it more like machine learning, like how do we create programs that are able to learn things. And the most popular models that people are talking a lot about right now are called large language models. And that's a specific niche or a specific subtopic of machine learning. I think the reason why people are excited about them or not is because of their kind of uncanny ability to replicate kind of a written or spoken human interaction. It's quite remarkable, as David said, their ability to do that. And in general, the way that those systems work is that they are at their core, they're very, very large neural networks, artificial neural networks. And they have, in the case of large language models, billions of adjustable parameters in those networks that can change all the little strengths of their own artificial neural network in response to training. And the training sets that they are using today are astronomically large compared to what I saw 20 years ago when natural language processing and machine learning of this kind first came out. So now you're seeing models like ChatGPT, being trained on 150 billion parameters, which was just inconceivable technically inconceivable, only some small number of years ago. So it's quite so I can answer any other specific questions about it, but mainly they are language models that are based upon training sets that are available on the web.
Wow, that is the clearest explanation I have ever heard. Thank you so much.
Which is the most important parameter?
That's a great question. I think if you were a neural AI scientist, you would say, well, that's like asking what's the most important brain cell you have.
Oh, well, then that's easy to answer.
or is it also like asking who's your favorite child?
It might. Yeah.
You'd have to have an awful lot of children, though, to be in that position.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, shoot some questions at us.
Well, how is AI? I mean, how is AI used in the field of mental health? How would a therapist use AI, or how would AI replace a therapist? Anyway,
well, there's a tremendous answer to that, and Jason will now provide it.
Yeah. So I've been able to see a couple different applications that I think I think we could, as a group, talk about like what their real applicability is and whether they're working well. But I can tell you what some of the main applications are. So there's obviously the one that their minds tend to go to first, which is this notion of like an AI therapist, like that it could fully replace a human, like a human physician or a human clinician in the role of psychotherapy or psychoanalysis. And so I think that's where our minds go first. And when we think about AI and therapy, it's probably not the preeminent application. The other uses that I see are more about how could it augment human therapists in the work that they do. And I could touch on that a little bit about different versions of that I've seen. How can it augment patients in therapy on their own journey, not necessarily be their primary therapist, but be an adjunct to their therapist. And then you also see a whole bunch of other applications that are kind of meta-clinical applications, like record keeping, recording, transcribing, summarizing therapeutic interactions into formats that the therapist wants to see and can more usefully use in the next session. In clinical trials, we see it being used right now in mental health clinical trials. And in those settings, they are being used to evaluate adherence criteria. So you can teach the AI, like, here are the set of things we want to actually happen during the therapeutic session. And then it can listen to the actual transcription of the therapeutic section and summarize whether those things actually happened or not. So there's a bunch of different applications we see it in, though, like I said in the beginning, I think the one our minds most readily go to, and the one that I think is most controversial, is can it replace a human therapist?
I was telling Jason that before you guys joined, that I started to work with a young woman who is questioning her gender, and I asked a friend of mine for some guidance, and my friend put that question into Chat AI, and it generated some really incredible, beautiful, poignant, questions that I was really impressed with and actually used in my session with her. That was one application that was really cool.
And that was like to augment the therapy type application.
Yeah. Matt, how have you used AI?
I'm not sure if I've really harnessed the tremendous power of AI in the therapy that I do very effectively so far. I'm very interested in it. I'm pretty convinced that the combination in the very near future, the combination of human and AI therapist will outperform any other combination, either AI or human alone.
Matt, why do you think that?
That's been a trend that's been observed in other applications of AI. So, for example, when coincidentally, I think this was around the time that we started medical school, Jason, that IBM had created Deep Blue, the supercomputer that actually won 2 out of 6 games against Garry Kasparov. And this was, kind of mind-blowing. I think most people predicted that that would be impossible, that a computer could never beat a grandmaster at chess. And now it's become commonplace to pit AI against AI and human against human, but also a combination of human and AI against both of those. And that has always been more successful, that you see more wins in chess if it's a combination of the human and the AI working synergistically.
Yeah, and Matt will remember, like, so IBM kind of branded that whole approach in this product that they brought to market called Watson. And when he and I were in medical school, there was a lot of talk then, and that was more than a year or two ago, by the way. Yeah. I think we're going on 20 or more at this point. So there was a lot of talk because Watson was being introduced into oncology as its primary indication, that and very much like the conversation we're having today. There was a conversation of, are oncologists going to be replaced? Is this going to be a better doctor? Is it? And what turned out to happen after 20 years, so they've had a lot of run at it, is almost identical to what Matt just said. Is it didn't replace oncologists. It never got to that level of sophistication, though some might have argued that it did. But what it definitely did was create augmentation for oncology. So, there are huge numbers of sophisticated systems now used by a number of oncologists that rely on that very powerful artificial intelligence. So it became kind of a human AI cooperative in the treating of oncology.
I have a question that now that we're measuring outcomes, or some people, not everybody, but in psychiatry and psychology, even within therapy sessions, as Rhonda knows and Matt knows very well, using how are you feeling at this moment, so we can see the effectiveness of every single therapy session, as well as the level of empathy and warmth. And I would want to pose the kind of hypothetical question, because I don't think it's too hypothetical. Let's assume that we can develop an AI therapist that on all measured parameters can outperform any human therapist. Then under those conditions, like it would eliminate depression faster and all of the anxiety disorders, and help with relationship problems more effectively, be more empathic than human therapists, more helpful, and with highly accurate scales measuring these things. Would there be, first of all, would this be acceptable to people? Would this drive human therapists out of business? And number two, what might be the things that human therapists could do that the AI therapist could not do? What might be the human function that is there one that couldn't be replaced?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. It's something I think a lot about when I'm looking at different applications. Mm-hmm. And it's almost a question back to you. Like, one of the things I think a lot about, I'm not a practicing clinician, so it's a better question for you, is I start thinking about things like, what is the role of trust? And what is the role of like therapeutic rapport? And how do they play a role in the outcome that you're, like as you're talking about?
Well, those are tremendous questions, and I think very answerable. Like even in before we had AI, we were working with the Feeling Good app, and we just had a kind of a pseudo AI, a fake AI. But we measured warmth and trust and understanding in the hundreds of app users, and we also measured it at intake before they started the app. Asked how how much warmth do you experience from the people in your life? How much understanding, how much trust, that type of thing. And then we also ask them, how much do you expect to get with the app? How much trust, warmth, and understanding? And the findings were unexpected and kind of sad that the people using our app had, from the people in their lives, only getting like 40 to 50% on a 0 to 100 scale, trust and understanding, which I had no idea it would be that low. And then they predicted like maybe 10 points higher from the app. But the actual ratings from the app were in the range of 85% on both parameters. So they were experiencing almost twice as much trust, rapport, warmth, and understanding from the app as from the people in their lives, which was cool on the one hand, but sad on the other hand. But that was before the AI, and now with the AI version of it, I think that the trust levels and the rapport levels, no human will be able to equal the AI. Matt could come close and might be able to beat the AI. You're like the Tony Gasparov or whatever his name was.
Gary Kasparov.
But even looking at what I was looking at last night, it would be hard to imagine, and of the therapists that we train in your group and my group at Stanford, they're nowhere near as good as what the AI is doing, and people may or may not want to accept that, but it's something that can be measured. And once we get our new AI version of the app going, we'll certainly do refined experiments to test that out and trust it. But let's assume, just for the purpose of the argument, that the AI is getting consistently 99s on empathy and rapport and trust, and the occasional one like Matt or Jill Levitt or Rhonda maybe can get that much of the time. But then what? Does that mean that therapists are out of business, or will always be in business? And then what's the role of that and outcomes? I published the only analysis of the causal effect of rapport and empathy on outcome and depression in the world literature in the mid-1990s, because that involves circular causal modeling, because in a human interaction, you can't have a group of warm therapists and a group of hostile therapists who are equal in all other respects and then randomly assign people to treat them to find out, because you couldn't create it in the first place. It would be an ethics violation in the second place. But you can do it with a form of mathematics called non-recursive structural equation modeling. If you have, I won't go into the mathematics of it, but you can estimate the reciprocal causal relationships. And does empathy lead to an improvement in depression? Or does an improvement in depression lead to patients feeling closer to their therapist and saying, I feel cared about by my therapist because I'm not depressed now, so I feel more lovable? And that's the most difficult problem mathematically to sort out in statistics. But the analysis I did at my clinic in the mid-1990s and published in the Journal of Consulting and Clinical Psychology showed a modest causal effect of the rapport and empathy on the changes in depression, but it wasn't a large effect, and certainly wasn't going to cure anyone of anything. And then other people have had trouble replicating that. For one thing, they maybe don't know how to do the math, or maybe our group was too small because we only had a group of 13 therapists in that study and maybe 500 patients. So it wasn't really definitive. But now we'll be measuring it for the first time because, and we designed the study last night, and what we're going to be doing is measuring empathy or measuring negative feelings in 7 dimensions with highly accurate scales just prior to the AI doing empathy. And then once the AI gets to an A or an A plus in empathy, just like what we can do in maybe 20 minutes in a therapy session or 25 minutes, then we're going to measure those 7 dimensions again, and then we'll see for the first time what is the impact of incredible empathy on changes not only in depression but anxiety and anger and everything else. And I can't wait to find out. And it could be just a matter of weeks, and we'll get that answer. But we're not going to train a nasty AI to compete with that. We're only going to see if this fantastic empathy plays a role. But regardless, it's going to take vastly more than empathy to get people to recover from things. You know, Carl Rogers said it was a necessary and sufficient condition for personality change, and that just turned out to be wrong. But most of us think it's necessary, because if you're going to use powerful techniques, you have to have a patient who likes you and trusts you and feels like you trust them. And it kind of opens the door to come in with powerful techniques to make the depression disappear or the panic attacks disappear or whatever you're working on. So you're going to need more than just beautiful empathy and rapport, I suspect.
Okay, can I jump in with a different approach? The opposite. You know, to me, it just feels like even though you're having all this data, that eventually working with an AI therapist just feels cold and hollow to me. That there's no eye contact with a human being, even on Zoom when we're doing online therapy. There's eye contact, there's facial expressions. And it reminds me of Harry Harlow's experiments with rhesus monkeys, where they gave them the option of, a mother made out of wire versus a mother, a fake, made out of, warmth. And they chose the mother figure that gave them warmth.
Well, there's a great point. We'll let our experts answer that.
I think about that question a lot, Rhonda. And I really appreciate David's answer, and it's a stimulating and thought-provoking one, right? To really question. I think, like most people who are clinicians that I speak to, reflexively say, some version of, well, the empathy is essential. I think what David's bringing to the table is, do we really know that? I think we all want to believe that. But I'm not sure we really know that. And that's a part of it. There's another part that I would offer. This is something else I and others who are thinking about AI in this field are thinking a lot about, which is there's a lot of concern in the AI space right now about, how will AI manifest in people's lives? And if it does so, will it be safe, or will it be malicious, or could it be that way? And one of the common arguments that suggests that it might be safe or it might be okay is that, that we're not stupid, right? That when we use AI or we're using some version of it, we're aware that, it's an artificial intelligence, so we're wary of it, or we're protecting ourselves of it. Whereas if you think about AI in therapy, it's literally the opposite of that, right? We are actually expecting to change the human being based upon the AI. And that's, I think, a little frightening. I think that's something that one has to think about. And I really appreciate the things that David said, about the results that he's seeing. But then that brings up the very important next question: who's training it?
Exactly, and you can't just take AI and get the kind of results I'm talking about, and it takes someone more intelligent than the AI to train it properly. But the other thing, we can't all be dreamy, cute therapists like Matt May. with beautiful eyes. But with AI, I mean, if I don't mean to be facetious, but I mean, people could even choose the therapist they want talking to them, and they could choose someone with very dreamy eyes who's a lot better looking than elderly, half demented David, and things like that. I mean, if the eyes are important, that's something that, you know, AI could be, you know, your dreamy eyed shrink, I suppose, if one wanted to do that. But it's a neat question, Rhonda, and a very important question, and you know, we want to think there's something special about the human experience that couldn't be replicated by a machine. And you know, maybe that'll be you know, something that the human race will never let go of that idea. And maybe there is that it's going to be kind of fun and scary to find out, I suspect.
Well, Jason, you raised the question of is AI safe? And so I just want to follow up with that. Like, can AI be made to be safe? I mean, is there a way to guarantee safety? If that's possible, maybe there's no guarantees in life, but can it be made to be safer?
I think it definitely can be made safer. I think it's a complicated and powerful technology. You know, akin to any kind of complicated and powerful technology we're aware of. You know, automobiles, air travel, you know, nuclear power, all kinds of complicated technologies that, you know, are they safe? Well, I'd say that I'd say that we tolerate their risks. Is a better answer or a better question than, you know, can we tolerate the risks? In those cases, we've decided we tolerate those risks, right? In the cases of, for example, automobiles, which kill thousands and thousands of people in the country every year, you know, we've decided we tolerate the risk. And I think when we look at AI, we're going to have to I don't think we will find ourselves in a state where there are no risks, or that there are no consequences. There will be consequences. I think the question are going to be, can we tolerate them?
And we're already seeing some of the consequences of AI on our society, where, you know, social media, for example, as that has increased in usage and popularity, I think we've seen about a 30% increase in suicide rate. And a lot of people believe it's attributable to increased usage of what is in fact an AI-driven resource. So we can see that this is a tool, like it's like any other tool that's been introduced to humanity, like fire. It can be, you know, used in ways that are amazing and improve our lives from the standpoint of, you know, sterilizing food and making, you know, bricks and metallurgy possible and things like that. But it can also be misused. And I'm sure everyone at this point has probably seen The Social Dilemma, which describes this problem and how AI that is the outcomes are, you know, trying to increase the amount of time that humans use social media seems to be leading to negative effects. And
how does the AI lead to the increase in suicide with social media? It's driving kids to sites where you can become thin and you should become thin and anorexic, so that type of thing, or does it lead to bullying or what?
Yeah.
Cyberbullying is an issue. It seems like the things that hold people's attention are negative emotional states.
I see.
And so the more disturbing the content, the more likely it is that people will continue to click. And that will be positively reinforcing the AI to deliver more of that material.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Wow.
Making things more awful to people, and people are fascinated and want to see someone being bullied or something like that.
Possibly. And I think that it's not clearly understood exactly how this works. There's another theory that there's just more availability of content that desensitizes people to the idea of suicide.
Yeah.
And there can be even kind of like a peer pressuring or identity-based self-harming identity that people pursue. So so I think again, it's a double-edged sword in terms of the technology. We're also seeing that things can occur where an AI intervenes in a situation where there is bullying. Just a minor intervention saying, hey, that seemed like kind of an uncool comment, like that might have been hurtful to that person. I like that person.
Right.
And it's a bot that is doing that, but it actually reduces cyberbullying. So
that's
again,
cool. Is that something that's happening now? And
yeah, there have been studies on that.
Neat.
Yeah, and to pick up on something Matt said there are quite clear examples in social media that came out both publicly and under subpoena, where not only did the machine learning system essentially glom onto an idea, like Matt said, which is that if I create negative experiences for these people, it will increase their time spent. So that was clear. That the AI algorithms determined that and then began to implement that. And what was additionally clear and I think greatly upsetting was that there were human beings who were aware, and officers of various companies in social media that also became aware of that and didn't do anything to stop it.
Because the more time, that's money for them then, right?
Correct.
Wow.
Right.
We at Evolve have been longtime supporters of a nonprofit organization called the Center for Humane Technology, which was founded by Tristan Harris and Asa Raskin, who were responsible for the movie that Matt was talking about. And they've been deeply concerned about this ever since they both left the tech industry with these kinds of things, which I think goes back to my comment about this being extremely powerful. And so it kind of depends on who's using it and for what purpose. I think when you get into the commercial world and the purposes become commercial, then the goals can be contrary to humanity.
Right, because Jason, you said people aren't stupid, but when you described, when people get into the commercial world, they're not motivated to help others but they're motivated perhaps by profit or greed or power or notoriety. And that might lead to a different outcome than, say, the beautiful research that David is creating.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting, so the founder of Evolve, Bo Shao, and I spend a fair amount of time off and on talking about this. And, he constantly brings up the idea that, the artificial intelligence doesn't really understand what it is doing. It doesn't have contextual knowledge about the words that it's using and the way that we do.
And that's what makes it so human. Doesn't know what it's talking about.
It doesn't really understand. Yeah. What it's doing, it's running an optimization, right? It's optimizing towards something. And I think one of the interesting things he's posed several times to me, and I think a lot about, is it really matters whether or not you know what it is you're optimizing for, right? It really matters. And there's a huge opportunity for unintended consequences there. If you're not exactly sure what it is that you want to optimize for example, let's say, I wanted to optimize for human happiness. Well, how is it going to decide? Whose happiness? How many people's? Right? Who gets to be happy? Is it better if there were just a lot less people, then there'd be a lot more happy ones? There's all kinds of ways that, if it has a goal, it could simply reach to that goal in a way that we would kind of immediately discard and consider unacceptable, but it doesn't. It doesn't have any, doesn't have any empathy or contextual knowledge. And careful what we teach it to do.
And to piggyback on that a little bit, so one potential concern would be, what would be the mechanism of the increase in happiness? Mm-hmm. Because people could be very happy doing things that are highly antisocial or immoral.
Mm-hmm.
No.
You've never seen that before, right, David?
Yeah. So, right. I think that there's a lot of complexity here.
As
David,
well as its
yeah.
unintended consequences, like evolution, like when you evolve trained dogs, breed them for certain characteristics, you're successful, but then their appearance changes radically.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, so it could be that AI will change human evolution.
Oy. Is there a best case scenario in therapy for artificial intelligence for AI?
Or is there something that AI couldn't do as well as a human therapist? That's another question I had for you guys.
One thing I wanted to just explore a little bit, I don't know, but I'm not an expert in AI, but I've trained a lot of therapists, and one thing I've observed as a pattern is that therapists' greatest strengths are often their greatest weaknesses as well, and vice versa.
Matt, can you give us an
example of that? Yeah.
Sure. So let's try to use an AI example too there, where imagine I'm a patient and I've got crippling social anxiety. I might be more likely to reach out to an AI therapist than a human therapist. But the potential to be like face to face with a human being might be too scary. And so the upside would be that I would be more likely to go to therapy in the first place and get some help. The downside might be that I wouldn't actually be facing my fear or get some of the passive exposure that occurs just talking to a human when you have social phobia.
That's a brilliant example. That is so clear. Yeah.
Yeah, and let me add another thought, which goes like, you were asking what are some of the things that it's like AI simply isn't doing very well. One of the things, at least I've observed, again, I'm not a clinician, so I only observe it in my expert friends and in the clinical trials that I observe and things like that, is that I feel one of the key attributes of a good therapist is to kind of sort through the truth about a person, because I'm not sure, especially when people first come and first exposing themselves in a therapeutic environment, they're always telling the truth. And one thing that AI has not been shown to be very powerful at yet is discerning that.
Is that it's what?
It doesn't discern that very well, right?
Oh, yeah.
It assumes that, if you type a query into a large language model, it assumes that's actually what you want, right? There's no layer of meta-analysis going on about, is that really what you're talking about, or are you really sure about that, or are you telling me the truth about that? It just assumes, it takes you very literally. And so I think there's a certain ability of a therapist to deal with guile, that may be very therapeutically important. And I'm not saying that AI could never get there. You start to imagine all kinds of more sophisticated things, like maybe it could see you on camera, maybe it can start to analyze all your voice stress patterns, and all those things are possible, but it's not there now. And so it tends to just believe whatever it is you tell it.
I love what you're saying, Jason. When I was in Philadelphia, I had just a little clinic at Presbyterian Medical Center, just mainly outpatient focused. Was my private practice, and one of I'm somewhat paranoid, and that's a two-edged sword. But it can be a real benefit, because one of the things is I could often see through new patients very quickly. Usually they just had a heart of gold, and they were, what you see is what you get, and they're doing their best. But a lot of them had, kind of a dark side to their nature, a number of them. And I was pretty quick to pick up on that. A lot of times bipolar patients, especially patients with narcissistic traits, would often have kind of antisocial things thrown in there. And the other therapists actually were very, very poor at that. That because they're so idealistic, they're seeing people as all good, and they would have trouble picking up on the dark side of certain patients, and that there can be disastrous consequences when you miss out on someone's suicidal or especially violent urges and fantasies, and so that's something that human therapists can have a lot of problem too. And then, but another thing I was wondering, someone in our group, I said, is there something that the AI won't be able to do? And Teresa, one of the people in our development group, said, well, some therapists can have great intuition about what's going on, and I'm not sure AI will be able to do that. And Matt, the hidden emotion model, where you have a very anxious patient who's obsessing a lot, and everyone's doing exposure or cognitive techniques or motivational techniques, but most therapists aren't familiar with the hidden emotion model. But I can detect that really fast in patients where there's something that they're sweeping under the rug, that there's some problem in their life that they're avoiding that's actually fueling the anxiety. So there could be things like that requiring therapist intuition, where the AI would maybe not be as good as a really skillful therapist. Does that make any sense to anybody?
Yeah, like a lateral thinking problem where you have to leap from, okay, I'm observing this, but it actually means this other thing. And
yeah, right. Yeah, that there's another way to think about what's going on here. Like the patient who goes.
It makes great sense to me, David. In our work, we deal a lot with trauma patients, trauma victims, and veteran trauma and whatnot, and that's a very common manifestation, right? That they're never talking about their trauma.
Yeah. Oh, is that right? I didn't know that. They
have all kinds of things that they want to talk about, but not.
Oh yeah, they're avoiding. They're being avoided. Yeah.
They have all kinds of issues, and those issues are manifesting very strongly. But they will, they often exhibit great unwillingness.
Oh yeah, right, because it's so painful for them.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, and there's also, the technique, Rhonda and Matt, changing the focus, right?
Right.
Which is hard for therapists,
yeah.
Actually human therapists, to learn as well. When there's tension going on in an interaction and everyone is avoiding the elephant in the room, including the therapist, that the patient is pissed off, the therapist is kind of pissed off, and they're being real nice and trying to stay in their formal role. And that takes an intelligent therapist with some training to. You'd think it would be obvious to say, hey, I'm sensing something going on between us. Are you feeling that awkwardness too? And could we talk about that? And that can lead to a big therapeutic breakthrough. That's also one of the more subtle, I would say, therapeutic skills.
So just to summarize what you guys have said. So an AI therapist couldn't say, I notice you're not talking about XYZ. That kind of subtlety can't be replicated yet with an AI therapist. And what David was just talking about, changing the focus. I notice tension in the room. Do you notice that too? Can we talk about it? An AI therapist wouldn't be able to notice those subtleties.
We don't know that because AI does have feelings.
It's not ours.
Scary.
Yeah, it definitely has feelings, just not ours.
I think that is
answer your. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
That's scary.
Yeah, I think that is like another example of the, how a greatest strength can be the greatest weakness too. That the fact that the AI actually doesn't have an ego. It's not a human.
That's right.
Human being. It's not defending anything, and so like someone with very poor social skills might just interact with the AI and couldn't offend it, couldn't actually make the AI pissed off and angry.
Yeah.
But then might not also benefit from the therapist becoming pissed off and angry and talking about those feelings and how that's an example of why their other relationships in their life are not working out.
Yeah, like your worst therapeutic failure is almost always your greatest success in disguise.
Exactly.
And you're screwing up with this patient, but that's exactly what should be happening. And if you just relax and talk about it, that'll bring you on the road to something really tremendously important.
Yeah, and so it could be a problem that the AI would be infallible. If it can't make a mistake, then it can't, demonstrate how a human being talks about making a mistake and hurting someone they care about.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
that's
was going to come back to something Rhonda was saying. I think it's not fair to say that the AIs can't learn those things that you were talking about. Like it could actually learn to like start to probe about things that are not being talked about, and it could use like a set of pattern recognitions.
That's right.
To say like, okay, I've seen this person now say this, and then this, and then this, and there's a high chance that they are now hiding something. It can learn patterns like that, and that comes back to an interesting question about how can it learn, and one of the things that I'm thinking about, and I know a lot of people in the field are thinking about, are all of these models to function really well require what's called supervised training.
That's right.
They don't work. One of the reasons that people have observed this, if you just go play with ChatGPT right now and just start asking it questions, what you'll find is that some things it has very sophisticated, very like smart answers about, and other things it doesn't. And you will wonder probably, like I did when I first started playing with it, like, I wonder why. It doesn't seem like there's a bunch of difference between these things. And often the answer is, well, there are certain things that it was trained on for which there's huge amounts of information and supervised information, meaning like human beings talking to one another on Reddit, or huge amounts of like blog responses about a specific topic on like a computer programming topic on Stack Overflow. Well, it really knows. It's really learned about those things. And then, but if the topic is kind of in the margin, it will make mistakes. It'll make all kinds of association errors and not come up with a really good answer. So that comes back to the topic that David, I think, is working on. And one of the reasons we got interested in his work, which is about supervised learning. Like, how do you teach it actually?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's a fun thing to be involved in, but you have to have a good teachers who know how to train the AI to really make it do these fantastic things.
No question. I mean, if you put it in front of a really bad therapist for a long time, it will become a bad therapist.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's not going to learn it's not going to observe a bad therapist and learn to not be one, right? It only is mimicking the behavior.
You know why Matt was my favorite student of all time, Jason?
Oh, please tell me.
Well, he's very hypnotizable, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, and he's a great hypnotist too. But he goes into trances all the time.
I've witnessed that many times.
But he's hypnotizable. So whenever we'd supervise together, he would go into a trance. And so whatever I told him, he literally believed and did with his patients. And so he became a fantastic therapist really, really fast. And the AI is just like Matt. It does what I tell it to do. It believes what I tell it. So it learns really, really fast. I think that's it's kind of the student I've always dreamed about.
I'm sure it's my greatest weakness as well.
Okay, so here's one last question I think that has to be answered. What is the best case scenario for AI in therapy? What's the optimal use for it? Like, how could therapists use it for their needs? What's the best part of the therapeutic process that AI could serve?
Why don't we all four of us give our own answer, and we can start with Jason.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so I'll give a near-term answer. I won't answer the question in extremis, like what's going to happen 10, 15 years from now, which I think is exciting. But I think the near-term answer is that it will become a therapy adjunct. that therapists will use it as a very powerful engagement tool with their patients or their clients. And I think its most powerful feature is that it is asynchronous, right, to therapy, right? It can happen anytime.
Yeah, right.
Anytime a patient feels bad, it could interact with it. Anytime that there's a moment that they're just sitting waiting for the bus, they could interact with it. They could wake up in the middle of the night, and interact with it. And that's a real power, right? That I think therapists will use to harness. They'll say like, oh, I could actually be involved with my patients in a way I kind of would always want to be, but obviously I can't professionally. When they're actually feeling bad, I'd like to hear why, right? When something happens to them, I'd like to hear about it.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Who do you see paying for that? Would that be a prescription paid for by insurance, or the therapist would buy the therapist helper to use with his or her patients to speed up recovery, or what would be the business model there?
I mean, reimbursement's more complicated than AI.
Yeah, I'm sure. Sure. Yeah.
So I'm not sure who's going to pay for that.
Yeah.
But I think the value proposition could be so high that it could actually be kind of a pseudo consumer product that that patients or clients would be willing to pay a small subscription fee, to have as an assistant. Not a therapist, but as an assistant, like as almost like like an intermediate coach.
Yeah,
I think there's a brilliant set of things that could happen. It could listen to your therapy session, and it could remind you of things like, if I all of a sudden feel really negative about an interaction I'm having, I could say, hey, I'm feeling really negative, and it could say, don't you remember Matt told you that when that person says that to you, it's bringing up this other emotion and it's making you angry?
Yeah, right. Or do you remember to use the disarming technique when you talk to your wife?
Right.
Dumbbell.
Exactly. It can say, then I'm making great use of I can only get Matt to give me an hour of therapy once every month.
Yeah.
When
I was in private practice, I required my patients to record every session and listen to it at home after the session. And if they didn't bring, that was the days when we had tape recorders, so they had to bring a tape to the session. If they didn't bring a tape, I wouldn't see them.
Yikes.
So they remembered to bring their tapes, or I had one I would sell to them at a markup price to record their session. But they said the session sucked, but the recordings were fantastic. And they really learned more from the recordings. And so to take a page out of your brilliant book, what you were just saying now, that would make it even more than just listening to the recording, but using that recording to come alive, to continue that therapeutic intervention, whether it's some way of communicating with people during conflict or identifying the distortions in your thoughts or whatever the thing was that was really helpful for the patient. That's neat.
Yeah, and then it could even, if it was recording all that, it could even summarize it for you as the clinician.
Yeah.
Next time you see me. Since the last time you saw Jason, these are the things that that came up.
Yeah, and he cut down on his serial killing. He only took one victim this week because of the last week's session.
And he felt so much better about it.
Yes, his guilt is gone entirely. He's killing for pleasure now. Thanks to David's book, Feeling Good. Your vision there for the AI therapist helper is pretty incredible and compelling and very practical and inspiring. What's your view, Matt, of how AI might be a blessing, a good thing? How do you see it possibly functioning in your clinical practice?
Yeah, I actually have a lot of hope and optimism for AI, as maybe to build on a couple of points that Jason was making there. The ability to be sort of omnipresent in a person's life, like tirelessly monitoring, things like, galvanic skin responses or heart rate or blood pressure, could give AI an advantage in terms of detecting at a very early stage a relapse or an, you know, a chance that the person is going into a very negative emotional state, and to interrupt that early. So I think that's one function that a normal human therapist just can't follow their patient around 24/7, and just doesn't have the sensitivity to detect these subtle changes, physiological changes that occur when humans are stressed. So I think that's a possible application that could reduce violence, could reduce suicide, could reduce conflict and even depressive or panic attacks, things like that. I mean, the other obvious thing is that human physicians just can't keep up with all the knowledge that's coming out. It's I 100 articles were published today that I wish I knew the contents of them, but the AI.
If there's any you want me to summarize for you, I'd like
to. Yeah, we'll talk about that in the next podcast. But yeah, just the capacity to be almost omniscient, and just to know things that the human therapist might get wrong, and to be able to say, well, actually, no, the new data suggests this instead of that, I think would be nice as some safety rails for human therapists to not, be deluded by misinformation.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a chance, like you said, David, just to develop an AI that is just so far superior to human beings, human therapists, that it would lead to kind of a golden age where people grew up with the best therapist they could ever imagine. Just someone they could always talk to about anything and get great advice and empathy, and that seems like it would lead to a possible kind of utopian age. But I'm sure there's a downside here somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure somewhere, but that's neat. I have a question for you before we go on to our last two speakers on this topic. I know one of your problems as a therapist has been your effectiveness. Sunny Choi has the same problem with very few patients lasting beyond 3 or 4, maybe 5 sessions at the outside. And whereas if you're not an effective therapist, or you fancy yourself effective, but from a practical point of view, you do talk therapy that goes on for months or years or more than a decade in some cases, so you don't need a lot of patients. But if you're effective, you're turning people over so fast, you're always struggling to get new patients, and the AI could be making a lot of therapists, massively effective who aren't now effective, and get a kind of therapist helper there that's going to be busily curing your patients between sessions, and they'll come back after the first session recovered. Do you sense that threat at all? If I suppose you don't from a practical point of view, because it's not like AI is going to become a therapy like overnight, like a fantastic forest fire blazing out of control all of a sudden. But could you imagine therapists not wanting an AI assistant if it starts causing their patients to recover super fast and then they lose their income?
Yeah, I think there might be a bit of a moral quandary here in terms of whether therapists are willing to work with an AI or not, and whether they're willing to submit their data to compare it to an AI out of fear of losing their jobs. I think there'll be some moral problems that may have to be dealt with at a political level. That could be one thing, and certainly we've seen a precedent so for example, radiology is already a field where AI can outperform radiologists. At least that's my understanding of it. So
it would make sense for sure. And what's happening then? Are radiologists losing their jobs, or?
That is my understanding.
That's actually happening?
Yeah, and that there will be more and more types of work, predominantly based on high levels of training and intelligence that would be, humans would become obsolete.
Yeah, well, as a human, I would want an AI to read my X-ray. It doesn't have to be a human radiologist from my point of view. I want somebody to get it right.
Yeah, the most skilled.
Yeah.
And we see that in AI outperforming human radiologists, just as it does chess players and Go players, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Rhonda, your vision.
I don't know. I have to be I'm not 100% on board of AI. I'm not on that. I mean, for a long time, especially when I was working forensics, I was taught never never touch a client. Out of forensics, there are times when my clients are having an emotional session. At the end of the session, they want a hug. They want a human interaction. They want, and I can't imagine having a therapeutic process without that as an opportunity for someone who wants it or needs it or desires it.
Sure. But there might be something in the human contact that would be not replaced ever by AI.
And then again, what Matt said, there's a, strength and weakness. I mean, an AI therapist will never violate someone's boundaries and perhaps sexually harass or, cross that boundary with their patient, or maybe an AI therapist won't do other kinds of unethical behaviors with their patient that we know we have to be wary of sometimes.
Yeah, that's true too. And there's so much corruption in humans, and therapists are no exception.
Yeah, you could see a potential misuse of the AI that is just infinitely patient and will listen, getting used as a punching bag, where the behavior of the patient, then it's just okay to treat this AI terribly, and then that becomes more their behavior. But potentially there's an outlet for that behavior too. So,
well, I just really hope that all of the, the potential conflicts and consequences are discussed and analyzed that we're doing by people who are creating AI, so that as much as possible they're being mediated. I just think that the discussion needs to continue at the depth that we're having. This was really an enjoyable conversation.
Yeah.
And it just kind of reminds me of that TV show, The Jetsons. I don't know if you guys are too young to watch that show. And that,
I watch that all the time.
Do you? And that, Rosie the robot, comes out and you can just be like, oh, I'm feeling kind of depressed. I want to talk to Rosie, and kind of like play with it. And then you might feel better. And that would be a really great thing. For me, I'm just going to be, timidly limiting my use to asking AI questions about various situations and getting some adjunct support about that, like I did.
Well, you're such a bubbly, loving, bright person. I can't see AI ever replacing a Rhonda. I know Matt, a David, a Jason, that's a different matter there. But Rhonda, you're very, very special. Well, here's my
thank you.
My wrap up. You're very welcome and deserving for sure. But the last night, I think Monday night. Yeah, that was last night. No, Sunday night. Jason, our Jason was working on our, AI thing, which was just born a few weeks ago, to tell you the truth. It's still, a little baby, but it's coming along. So he brought it down to the front desk in the apartment building to pick up a package, and then he saw a fresh fellow there sitting, I guess checking people in or doing something, and he said, do you have a few minutes? And Phil said, oh yeah, what's up? And he says, well, I've been working on this little computer thing. If you'd want to check it out, it has to do with maybe helping people when they have negative feelings. And is there anything bothering you? And the fellow said, oh yeah, yeah. And so we tested him. He had like 65 on a 0 to 100 on depression, just to simplify it. And he started working with the AI, and the problem was that he had very little money. He had just gotten this job working in this apartment building, and he's way behind financially, and feeling like it will probably be impossible, maybe impossible to ever catch up, and just feeling pretty hopeless and desperate about that. And he worked with it for 15 minutes. And then Jason tested him again. How are you feeling now? And he said 0. And he says, where can I get this thing? I'd like to have this available. And it was really amazing. And yet when I saw the dialogue that went on, it wasn't amazing that the fellow had gone to 0. And I guess my view of it would be a little different from yours, Jason. No better, maybe not as thoughtful. But we're trying to create the AI that will fully replace human shrinks, but we're not going to position it like that, because we have to do this wellness thing. So we're not involved in treatment, but just reducing negative feelings and boosting positive feelings. But I'd like to see. I'm hoping our thing, and maybe other people, I don't know how many will be able to do it, will be able to create something, and we hope to have it within a few weeks that will be comparable to, if not massively beyond, what a human therapist can do. And my dream of it, because that I've been into doing free stuff, is Matt and Rhonda, for the last 25 years. I've never charged anyone for therapy. My website is just all filled with free resources for people, because I'm aware that there's just so many millions of people all around the world who can't afford therapy, or they can afford it and they can't get a good therapist. Because, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure there are very many Matt Mays or Rhondas around, or Jacob Toweries, who can really bring about fantastic results. And the few we have are pretty sky high in the fees, and very few people can afford it. And if we could get something like that, and maybe we'll have it in a few weeks, that it seems to me could transform the whole field of psychiatry and psychology worldwide, and bring self-esteem and joy and happiness, and maybe even improve relationships to millions, if not hundreds of millions of people all around the world for very little money. With our app, if someone can't afford it, we'll give it to anyone who needs it for free. And boy, if we can make that happen, that would be my vision. When we started making our app, we didn't know about AI, and we aimed high, but now we see things are going to be possible that even 3 months ago I never would have dreamed is possible. So we'll see what happens. I could be all wet. I'm elderly, half to 3/4 demented now, so don't take much of what I say at face value. But I think if that dream could come true, boy, that we'd be leaping with joy.
Absolutely. I love that vision. David, I would be grateful to you if you put me out of a job.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we can come and hike all the time. I'll be happy.
We'd have more, yeah.
I'm barely able to walk, but we'll be so happy.
That's right. We can enjoy our hobbies and other interests.
Yeah, right.
I love that vision as well, David. One of the things we didn't touch on at all was the kind of the health equity issue in mental health, which it's one thing to talk about replacing top-end therapists as if that's where we need to go first. What about the millions of people who simply have no mental health support whatsoever?
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Maybe billions, actually.
Like your CEO, your colleague who wants to make something happen in China, what an awesome vision he's got. That's neat.
It's amazing, right? He's talking about a populace for which there is no real therapist mental health infrastructure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
in the entirety of the whole country.
Wow.
Of over 1 billion people. I mean, like that, so that there's an enormous health equity issue,
Yeah.
There's just millions of people who it doesn't matter how good it is. If even we're half as good as a therapist, half as good of nothing, versus nothing.
Yeah. Right.
Is real improvement. So
yeah. Right.
Really
right. Well, thank you, guys. I had high expectations for this podcast, and unfortunately, it didn't nearly live up to my expectations. But it was just awesome, and thank you. We're just so honored to have you, Jason and Matt. It's just always a joy every time we hang out.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate being invited. Happy to come anytime.
Okay,
great.
thanks.
Thanks
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Hey, hello, David. Hello, Rhonda. Thank you for having us.
That is the voice of Victoria Chicorel, and she is coming from Mexico City, along with her partner, Silvina Bucci. They are Team CBT Therapy in Mexico, or Terapia Team CBT Mexico. Did I say that right?
You did. Yes.
And you are putting on a Team CBT intensive November 6th to the 9th, and you have some incredible things to tell us about it, including the participation of our beloved David Burns. So why don't you tell us about your conference? Again, the dates are November 6th to 9th in Mexico City. Where is it? How can someone come to it? What's special about it?
Well, we want to invite everybody to join with us to this Congress that will take place in the Hotel Camino Real in Santa Fe. This is a modern neighborhood where you will find many offices of important companies in Mexico City. In the surroundings, you will find shopping malls and first-class restaurants. It is a very safe neighborhood, so you can come with calm and with joy. And the weather in those days will be very pleasant, as it will be approximately 70 Fahrenheit grades. And we have the advice that you can bring a jacket for the night. We will have simultaneous translations from English to Spanish and from Spanish to English, so everybody can understand everything. And a delicious coffee break for 8 hours, where in the morning you will find coffee, tea, water, sodas, and pastries. And in the afternoon, we will offer crudités and snacks, as well as beverages. The hotel restaurants offer 20% discount for the Congress attendees on their food consumptions. So we will have with us Rhonda Barowski, Donna Fish, Marius Virgas, Yehuda Bar Shalom, Heather Clark, Lee Harrington, Andy Pearson, Steve Reinhardt, Nivedita Saint, and also via Zoom, we will have the presence of our dear and admired David Burns. And of course, Silvina and me, we will be teaching also. So Silvina, can you explain what those amazing people are going to teach?
Before she explains, I have two important questions about the conference.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, first, where can I get some of those pastries? I'm hungry. Great. And number two, what will I learn if I come to this amazing Congress on team therapy in Mexico City? If I'm a clinician, and could I come if I'm a general public person? Tell me just a couple tips here.
Of course, you'll learn a lot if you're coming to the workshop in Mexico. And you know what? We are thrilled to invite everybody to this Congress mostly because we know that learning in team CBT is really a game changer. So I think the participants are going to learn a lot, and they will also be eligible for level 1 certification by the Feeling Good Institute. And in this 4-day intensive training, that not only is going to be a training, but it's going to be a whole experience. And of course, as Victoria said, we are honored to have you, David, as a keynote speaker and doing live work with the participant, with Lee Harrington too, and also the Q&A segment. And we want to thank you. Yeah, Rhonda was going to be here too.
I'm doing David and I will be co-doing the co-therapy with the personal work.
I switched to Lee Harrington.
Oh, you switched. Oh, okay.
No, I meant the Q&A the Q&A segment. I'm sorry. You're right, Rhonda.
Yes. I love doing Q&A with Rhonda. It's one of my favorite things in the world.
Me too.
But you say that it sounds like an exciting conference. You say it's going to be a game changer. What game will I change? What will I learn? What will I be able to do that I can't do right now if I'm a clinician and if my goal is helping people relieve suffering and develop joy and self-esteem as quickly as possible? Will I learn about stuff like that?
Yes, you would. The participants are going to learn about the team framework and how to apply it. They're gonna have a session they're gonna know how to apply testing in a session that's gonna revolutionize the practice now, and they're gonna learn that empathy really makes a difference in the therapeutic process. They're gonna learn about the agenda setting that includes invitation, conceptualization, outcome and process resistance. They're going to learn about methods for habits and addictions. They're going to learn uncovering techniques and compassion techniques, social anxiety techniques, role-playing techniques, and the importance of focusing on one specific moment at the time. We're going to talk about the daily mood log that is an essential tool in team, and also about techniques for relationship. And the most transformational method in communication for me, there is the 5 secrets of effective communication that David created. So, and we're also going to have trivia games based on the material that was taught, because the main goal of this event, like any event that Dr. Burns has done, is helping the therapist to improve the therapist skills. So the participants not only going to be able to learn about depression, anxiety, relationships, habits, and addictions, but they're also going to have very special talks to learn from. So, Victoria, do you want to tell us about it?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Silvina. Something that I want to put attention is that they are going to learn, but how they are going to learn, they are going to listen to the theory, but they are going to practice with all these amazing people, our best teachers, that they will be helping them to, that they will do it well, that they will learn in the best way. And when the Congress is going to finish and they will come back to their consultants, they can begin to use these magnificent tools. So we will have these trivias also, where they can learn and know if they understood or not. They will have prizes that they will like it a lot. And
so, Victoria, you're talking about every day you're going to have in the morning like a trivia game, so that people are learning but also having fun learning, and they'll be able to win prizes if they score highly on the trivia game.
That's right.
Fun.
And I heard that you're giving away 3 new Teslas.
Yeah, they will have pastries, but also they will have some prizes that they are a big surprise.
Cool.
And after listening Silvina, that she gave a very specific information, it reminds to add that we will also have master classes such as Team CBT in the treatment of eating disorders with Donna Fish. And we will have Team CBT with patients with advanced cancer managing. Suffering Serial Disappointment and Hopelessness with Mariusz Virgas, and Suicide with Rhonda Barowski, and Brain Function and the Steps of Team CBT with Dr. Mark Noble. We will have the honor to have here also via Zoom. And I will talk about trauma. So can you see that it's a very complete program, and that we will have a lot of surprises that we are sure you will love. And the closure, it will be something unexpected, fabulous, and amazing.
Mostly the program.
That sounds great. So if I come, you say I'll be able to practice the techniques I'm learning?
Yeah, of course, David. And I think this is a very important issue. If you can practice, you can know if you understood them or not.
Oh, yeah, that sounds a little intimidating, but also very promising. So that maybe I'll be able to use these techniques in my clinical practice after the workshop. Is that right?
That's right.
And so this is a class for both beginning learners of Team CBT, but also for people who are advanced learners, so because you're having these master classes. Is that correct?
That's correct. And also, I think that always is very interesting to listen different ways of teaching, because each one has his own way. So it's very nice to listen how each one of us are going to teach, and always there is room to improve.
Neat.
And so I'll tell you what I'll be doing, what I'm excited about doing. I'm honored to be coming to this wonderful conference. And I'll give my opening keynote address probably on the first day. And I think I'm just going to tell you a lot of stories and things that will be fun for you to hear, that will tell you how I got into team and why I created it, and hopefully some stories that might bring tears to your eyes or make you smile with laughter. And then Rhonda and I are going to do on the second day, I think, of the workshop, a live demonstration with one of the people from the workshop, because you can hear people talk theoretically how great their school of therapy is, and blah, blah, blah. And you always wonder, what are they like behind closed doors? How effective are they really? And so we'll be working with somebody live. We'll be measuring their symptoms at the beginning and end of the session. We'll be having them rate us on empathy and helpfulness, so you can see exactly how these new techniques work and judge for yourself if it's something that's interesting and promising and exciting. I did something similar in England at their conference, and Mike Christensen was my co-therapist, and we worked with a young fellow who was incredibly insecure, and he began crying during the demonstration, and he was just certain everyone would be rejecting him because, he thought he wasn't good enough and he wasn't impressive enough. And it blew his mind to discover that people loved him just as he was, vulnerable and flawed and imperfect. It was a transformational experience, and one I'll never forget. And I'm hopeful that the one we can do in Mexico will be as transforming and fantastic as that. And if not, it'll be Rhonda's fault.
Absolutely.
And
it was the best.
Toward the end of the workshop, I'll be doing Q&A with Rhonda. I love answering questions, and so you can answer critical questions, hostile questions, admiring questions, hard questions, easy questions. We'll take them all and really have fun getting to know you on a little bit more of a personal basis there during our Q&A time. So I hope you can go. I think it will be a very powerful and fun event for you, and could very well be a career-changing event. These techniques have certainly made a tremendous change in my own personal work and career, and I think they might have a little something to offer you too.
Sweet. And so let's say somebody wants to come to the conference. How do they sign up?
They go to www.teamcbt.mx and they can register in the page. And we have now really special offers. We have 40% off for one participant. We have a 2-by-1. That is like 2 people and one payment is $523 right now in sale. And we have offer number 3. There is like 40% plus 15 for a group of 3 or more people.
Wow.
And are the pastries included with those prices?
They are.
Oh, I'm there. I'm all in. I want to sign up. And so for those of us who are slow learners, I go to Team CBT. That's TEAMCBT.mx. Is that right?
That's right. Yes. And the program is based on David's previous workshops. So like the one we attended in San Francisco in 2019. So we know that in any workshop that David participates is going to be enlightening and unforgettable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whether we succeed or fail, it'll be
Either
unforgettable.
And David, we will send with Rhonda some pastries and you can taste them.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, because they have a new option now where you can get them across the internet live. I'll have coffee and pastries while I'm teaching the first day of the workshop.
So it sounds like this team intensive is based on how David has taught in the past. It's going to be informative for beginners and more advanced people. There will be incredible topics, lots of inspiring teachers, yummy snacks in a safe, beautiful area with shops and also first-class meals. And the weather will be very accommodating, sunny and warm.
Yeah. So welcome everybody to Mexico City. We are waiting for you. Thank you very much. Thank you, David. We are very grateful for this opportunity. And Rhonda, we are really waiting with a lot of love. See you in Mexico City. And Silvina, do you want to say
We hope
goodbye?
to see you all.
Yeah,
we hope to see you all.
Act fast, folks, because it's just around the corner. So, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on
Thank
our
you
podcast
very much.
Thank you.
and telling us all about
Thank you.
it. Bye.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.